you are on to Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates. This is another class, literature class. Today, we'll be looking at another aspect of poetry. We've learned about type of lyric poetry, and we've learned about category. Lyric poetry, we have the definition, but under the category, it's not actually meant to be defined because it's a movement and it's a school of thought that moves away from the tradition and principles of poetry.
Eko Learners Support, a support program of the Lagos State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education for WAEC and NECO candidates.
Today, we'll be looking at a sample question based on the category of poetry, and it is taken from the poem, a non-African poem, Bat by D.H. Lawrence. The lesson title, Category of Poetry. Subtitle, Explain Bat as a romantic poem. That is how most of WAEC questions normally come. We have learning objectives. At the end of the lesson, students will, number one, study the poem. So it is expected that you have the full knowledge, in-depth knowledge of your poem. Number two, be able to analyze the poem stanza by stanza. Number three, state the characteristics of romanticism. Number four, state the demands of the question. And number five, be able to answer the question. The background of this poem is, the poem is about an individual preference for a particular element of nature over another. The poet persona is engrossed in the beautiful scenery of flowers, sun setting, moon rising. One of the characteristics of a romantic poem is also that it dwells on the beauty of nature. Nature is worshipped, nature is celebrated. And in that poem, we can actually see this characteristic. It actually shows the beautiful scenery of flowers, sun setting, moon rising, hills, mountains, etc. And that is seen around himself. The appearance of the mama bat ruined the peaceful, beautiful atmosphere of nature he was enjoying. So in this poem, we have two elements of nature that is being displayed in this poem. We have the bird, swallow, which is the favorite of the poet persona. And we have the mammal, bat. Bat is a mammal because it has vertebrates. The two birds are actually being compared in their creativity in the air. And so one of the characteristics of romantics is the fact that it tries to portray that creativity and imagination is at its best when an individual is left in the midst of nature on his own without a formal setting of a school. So it is a romantic poem that pits one element of nature against another. And what are the elements? Swallow and bat. Bat is actually like a rat that has wings. And contrasting the work of creativity of these two animals. Then we have the analysis. We have 17 stanzas here, but they are categorized according to their preoccupation. That is the stanzas preoccupation. So I have stanza 1 to 3. Those stanzas dwells on the description of the natural environment that the poet persona is actually enjoying. We have the poet persona sitting in his terrace and is enjoying the nature, the work of nature, the elements. And so in that stanza, It talks about the sun going down, the flower withering because it is evening, the mountain and the stream. It continues the description of the evening light. So in that stanza, we see something like, at evening, sitting on his terrace, when the sun from the west, that is setting from the west, beyond Pisa, beyond mountain of Carrara, those are the settings around the place that the man is seated. Departs, the sun departs, it's set, it's actually going off. And the world is taken by surprise. And what's the surprise? It just becomes dark all of a sudden. When the tired flower of Florence, we have alliteration, we have personification, is gloom beneath the glowing brown hues. That is, it begins to wither. It's not looking beautiful again because there is no sun. And under the arches of Ponte Vecchio, a green light enters against stream. That is the moon that is being mentioned there. The light reflects on the stream. So in that stanza one, you can see the beautiful scenery of nature as the man is actually engulfed in it, looking at the beauty, and is actually so excited about it. We go to stanza 4 to 7. Here, the man assumes that it is actually the swallow that is his best bird, and so he just assumes that all the images that are being formed in the air there are being formed by swallow. So he keeps on enjoying himself with the creativity that is coming out from swallow, until he got to a point and he realized that these images that are being formed are not really perfect, and they are not really perfect as a swallow will do it. So there is hesitation, there is confusion. At that point, his exuberance is cut short there. And so we go to stanza 8 to 10. The poet persona looks critically at the moves. And at this point, the man now begins to look up there and begin to look at the images. Note that there are no two birds up there, just one. We have just one, but he was thinking that that is swallow, until he looks at the formation of the images and everything, and he realized that this cannot be swallow. And he gave reasons. He said, number one, swallow does not fly in the night. And that all the images, the loopings, the swapping, they are not perfect. And so we have that here. He was saying swallow, asking a rhetorical question. Swallow, dark hair life looping. Looping is like a rope, and is forming different kinds of, images with that. They are the one actually forming the rope, and not that there is rope up there. Yet missing the pure loop. Yes, it's actually forming that beautiful image, but yet not as perfect as my swallow. And a twitch, that's a movement. The way it moves, it twitches. It's not like swallow. Twitter, the sound that is coming out from it is not perfect like my swallow. An elastic shoulder in flight, it stretches in the air, is not one of the characteristics of a swallow. And the falling back, the way it comes down, up there, down, it's not the way swallow will do it. Never swallow. So at this point, he was able to realize that that thing up there is not his bird. It is actually a mammal called bat. And from that point, he begins to show his disgust against this animal. He says the poet persona starts with the description of the physical appearance of bats in repulsive terms. Flying mildly, irritating, piping, appearing vindictive, that is vicious and cruel. It sleeps hanging upside down and grins in a terrifying manner. These ones can be found in stanza 11 to 16. It says, bats and an uneasy creeping in one's cap, making one uncomfortable, mere thinking about it. As the bat swap is a sudden change, the way it changes to form images. Flying madly, he calls it the Italian name, papestrillo. Look at the exclamation. Those ones are signs of disgust of the poet's persona. Black piper is actually pointing to the color of the bat, that is black. Black piper on infinitesimal pipe, non-stop. It's so irritating that it keep on making such sound non-stop, actually disturbing the peace of anyone that is listening to it. Little lumps that fly, that is such an animal that does not have beautiful shape like his swallow in the air, and that voice is indefinite, widely vindictive. It's like an omen, a bad omen to see a bat. That's why I said it is vindictive. And wings like beads of umbrella, describing, you can see the way he's actually describing bats in a very irritating manner. Creatures that hang upside down like an old rag. So wherever it is perched, it does not stand on the tree like a normal animal, but it actually hangs upside down. While it sleeps, hanging upside down like rows of disgusting old rags, and grinning in their sleep. Grinning will portray this picture of, this terrifying picture of maybe a witch, you know, the kind of picture that we have about witches. And so it continues, and we can see his personal opinion about bats. But despite his personal opinion, the larger society of China has a different perception of this animal. And that is one of the features of romantics. It actually celebrates individualism, personal interest, personal preferences over and above the wider society. They are always subjective over the objectivity of the society. So he said it ends with a wider world of China, a whole nation of China having a positive perception of bats, that the prejudiced view of an individual. And we have that one, the last line there. In China, bat is a symbol of happiness. For me, no. So the whole line, the whole verse, the whole verses in this poem is dedicated to the irritating and disgust disposition of this poet persona to that mammal, bats, and just a line for the whole society of China that has preference for this animal. And so this will actually help to now answer the question adequately. And what is the question? We first of all have, okay, in order to remind ourselves about the characteristics. When we have these questions, we must have a deep knowledge of the characteristics of this category of poetry. So because the question is on romanticism, we have the characters here. Number one, a deepened appreciation of the beauty of nature, which is seen in the first stanza of this poem. The man is seated in his terrace and is lost in the beauty that he can see where he's seated, the beauty of nature, the flower, the sun setting, the moon rising, mountain, stream, shadows, there he was just enjoying himself. So it actually replicated that characteristics. Number 2, a general exaltation of emotion and feelings. He can bear out his feelings about this mama. He actually hates it with passion, and it actually describes his hatred of this mama in this poem. Over reasoning and of the senses over intellect. It stresses the power of nature in elevating the human spirit to the greatest heights. This man was seated, but yet he's far into the air with nature, enjoying himself. Even with the creativity that is now beginning to compare, and the realization that is actually the bat that is seeing and ruin the pleasure that is having, yet is there watching the creativity and actually concluding that it is not perfect, that is swallow. So he's actually up in there with his all of his spirit, even though he's seated in his terrace. The romantics stress individualism. You can see his personal opinion and individual opinion, taking the whole of the poem. That is, celebrates subjectivity over reasoning and rebel against literary tradition. Then the question, explain Bats as a romantic poem. How do you now go about this? Following this pattern, we actually help you to perform very well in answering your question. But first, your poem, the knowledge of your poem is needed. Number 2, you have the in-depth knowledge of the romantics and every other category. Number 1, make a statement on the central theme of right to individual preference. And that is one of the major characteristics of romantics. Number 2, state the poem as a romantic poem by listing the characteristics of the romantics. That will help you to be able to begin to bring them out with examples from the text. Number 3, you relate the characteristics to the poem. You now begin to relate it. You pick one, relate it to the poem. Another paragraph, pick another characteristics, relate it to the poem with ample illustrations from the poem. Make a concluding statement by stressing the fact that the romantics is of the school of thought that creativity and imagination is at their best in an individual when he is not under control or tied to any formal procedure. This actually is portrayed vividly in one poem by William Wordsworth called The Schoolboy. Yes. So in romantics, most of the poems, you always see an individual actually expressing himself, his personal opinion, and taken completely by the emotions. And at the end of the day, when you do all this, you can be sure that you can actually do very well in your examination. I hope you have learned 1 or 2 things, and I know that your performance will begin to improve. For questions, comments, you can reach us in our social media handle displayed on the screen.
Acing your WAEC and NECO examinations has been made easy by the Lagos State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education with the Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO Candidates television program. Join seasoned teachers as they take you through these core subjects, targeting the exact syllabus of WAEC and NECO. Watch Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates through these social media platforms to access more educational content and give their feedback. Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates. Pass your examinations with flying colors.